All right. Not the Monday we wanted to spend after Miami, but here we are in a Monday night smash. Time to smash it up. It's brought to you, as always, by State Farm agent Russ Forrest. You're watching Warchant TV. He's Irish Schofel, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang. Let's gather around and let's have a chat about where Florida State is. Obviously, we know the record, 3-2. We know the circumstances in the ACC, 0-2. Let's have a conversation tonight. We've all had our first foray, our first volley, Ira, in different platforms. Obviously, you get the rap that you were standing on Bobby Bowden Field after this all took place, 28-22, into Sunday morning. Was it after midnight by the time you recorded that? What time were you guys working?
It was well after midnight. Yeah, I think we probably got out of the press conference about 12:30, maybe 12:45, somewhere in there, and then did the wrap. Then got on the road, got home, and I probably wasn't home until about 1:15 or 1:30.
We did something very similar with the post-game show, and then obviously, you appeared today on the JCS. Jeff and I bantied back and forth against expectations of where Florida State was before kicking off against Alabama. Where do you think they are now? How do you make sense of the way that this is laid out with the highest of highs beating Alabama, and then a month, as I called it, of peacetime with 2 cupcakes and a bye, and then 2 consecutive losses? How do you figure adding all those pieces together, sir?
I thought Mike Norvell, I thought it was interesting when he made the comment today about, of course, Alabama wasn't good back then. They weren't good the day we played them. They've only been good since then. I thought it was, I kind of like the fact that he said that. And in the context of it was him just talking about his confidence in this team and that it's unwavering, and that he believes the players are very confident. And he thinks that they know they can play a lot better than they did on Saturday, and certainly better than they played the week before at Virginia. And so, if you go back to what we thought before the season, I thought, you'd love to be 4-1. You would love to have beaten, Virginia, those other, and Miami, and then those other 2 games. I don't know how realistic I thought it was that they would beat Alabama. So I thought you'd love to be 4-1, but if you're 3-2, you can live with that because, again, my thought before the season was you really need to get to 8-4 for this to be a successful season. Now you'd love to be 9-3, 10-2. Anything better than that would be awesome. But for me, all the efforts they took this offseason, changing coaching staffs, bringing in all these new players, I just thought, whether it's fair or not, after 2-10, you needed to show a really strong season to have some confidence in this program going forward. And I thought 8-4 would give you that confidence. 7-5 I thought was dicey. 6-6 to me was bad, and that would probably need to be looked at some changes, whether or not they can afford them. I don't know how you could run it back at 6-6. So I thought 8-4 is what you're shooting for. Anything over that's gravy. Well, to get to 8-4, 3-2 is pretty much on serve. Unfortunately, you did beat Alabama. And so now to get to 3-2, you had to lose these last 2 games. So that stinks. And that's why everybody's got a sour taste in their mouth. But I think going into the season, 3-2 at this point, I would have thought you're on pace to get to where you need to get to, which is 8-4.
And part of your take earlier today was if you're really mad on a Monday in early October, you're kind of more mad at the Virginia result than you are the Miami result. Is that still the way that you see these last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think totally. Again, the Alabama game gave you kind of found money. It was a great win. It was awesome. I don't think Alabama played great in that day. I think they for whatever reason, whether they took Florida State lightly, whether it's because they just had a bad day, which we've seen teams can have bad days, or if it's because Florida State hit it out of them. That's possible too. Like they couldn't respond to the way Florida State played. All of those things are possible, but that's what happened. And so now you've got this opportunity, and what are you going to do with it? Well, they squandered it at Virginia. And so that to me is where you should be most frustrated. And I think that's why I was very frustrated in the moment after that game, because I knew that they just squandered that opportunity. Now, I thought the flip side could happen in the days leading up to the Miami game was, okay, maybe the bright side to that would be you come out and play your butt off against Miami. You hit like you hit it against Alabama, and maybe that affects Miami's offense. You play the way you've been playing offensively, And Miami has not faced an offense like that. So if you do all those things, you could get back to 4-1 and you could have 2 huge wins against Miami and Alabama. Problem was that didn't materialize. I thought Miami's offense was not affected at all by either Florida State's defense or the crowd. I think they did a good job of handling all that, at least in the first 3 quarters. They did a great job of handling all that. And then on the flip side, your offense made some huge mistakes, which they can't afford to make. And so that's disappointing. But again, to me, in the bigger picture, I never would have said like, oh, Miami is a game they have to win. I mean, you want to because it's a rival. But in terms of just the comparative matchup and what they've got and what you've got, I wouldn't say that's a disappointing result. It's really disappointing because you did blow the Virginia game.
I think the manner in which, 28-3 is just hard to stomach no matter
Sure.
what. And I think that's where a lot of the ire comes from. For me, just watching the game again this morning, especially that first half, I found it's almost unfathomable how you only walk out of that half with 3 points. You got 180 yards. I know your yards per play isn't through the roof at halftime, but you got 180 yards in the first half. You've held Miami to 24 rush yards. By hook or by crook, you get a couple of key stops there. Sometimes they're helping you, but you get a couple of key stops. And you're over the Miami 50-yard line a whole bunch in that half, but you got penalties, and then there are turnovers. Drives get stymied. There's a call or two from Gus I don't love, one of which is a Danzy end around. Like, there were like 5 of them, but there was one to the left on a 2nd and 9 that I don't know. It seemed not necessary at the time. And then Tommy looked off. The reason I was disappointed about that, Ira, is you go back to the Virginia game, and yeah, there are a couple of key turnovers, and obviously that's been a trend of late. But the offense consistently moved the ball up and down the field. It's like they started all right, and they did. When you look at the totals, they moved the ball in the first half, but they didn't cash in on any of those opportunities. I feel like if you play that half over again, Florida State is far more likely to have 7, 10, 13, or 14 points on the board than just 3. And some of the reason you didn't have that, a large reason you didn't have that, I think, is because Tommy was uneven. That's easily his worst performance. It's not hard to say in a Florida State uniform. And he hadn't shown that there was that kind of a low in this uniform yet. You had seen it in Chestnut Hill, but you had not seen it at Florida State. So, that's the hard part. I think if you promised me before we kicked off on Saturday night that Miami would only have 14 points at the break, certainly if you said that they only had 24 rushing yards at the break, you'd feel very hopeful about Florida State's chances. And yet, at halftime, I think we all felt it. Well, they're kicking the ball to Miami. If they score on this drive, it could get very, very ugly, and the game's essentially over, which is just kind of a strange set of data points for the game to play out the way it did.
Yeah, I think the 2 things about the offense I would say is, one, I think we have to take into consideration that Miami's defense is really good. We have to give them credit for that. Like, I think after the game, when Corey and I did the wrap, in the moment, I was a little bit more down on Tommy and the fact that he didn't play well, didn't hit some passes, didn't see some things. Then maybe in hindsight, maybe I'm a little bit more forgiving because, that is a really good defense, and that is an elite defensive line. Those pass rushers are as good as it gets. And so, that is going to speed you up. And so to sit here and say, well, Tommy, you didn't look as good as you did in these other games. Well, he had not seen a defense like that. He had not seen a pass rush like that. And Florida State's offensive line struggled in some of those situations with the pass rush. So that's a factor. You can't just mitigate it or ignore it. The other side of it is, I think this is a new world for Tommy. And again, I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but I am trying to look at it objectively. This guy played at UCF as a backup. Then he goes to Boston College, and he is the show, right? He's the guy. But they're not playing for anything ever. There's nothing on the line in any of their games. They're just playing football. And then he comes here, and I think that's kind of how he approached, not how he approached the Alabama game, but they were always in good situations in the Alabama game. They were always ahead of the chains. They were never behind really other than that first drive. Then they tied it right up. So they never had to play from behind the chains. They never had to make really sound decisions with game pressure and games that really mattered. So I think he's just not used to this. You can't throw some of the passes he's throwing. You can't make some of the decisions he's making in games that matter against top 5 opponents. So this is new to him. And I'm not excusing it. I just think it's reality. Like, we're probably expecting a little much from him, because if you think back to whether it was Christian Ponder or whether it was EJ Manuel or whether it was, anybody other than Jameis Winston, there are things you learn from as you grow along. Now, he's played a lot of college football, but he hasn't played on this stage in these games. So from that standpoint, I look at it more like this coaching staff has to help him out. Like, I think they've got to figure out a way to keep him in front of the chains. They've got to keep, and his teammates too. Like, you can't have a 15-yard penalty. You can't have false starts at home. You've got to do everything you can to keep him in a position where he doesn't have to be the hero. To me, that's where things got sideways in that game. That pass, again, the 4th and 8 play, whether you think they should have gone for it or not, whether you think it was a good play call or not, like, all that's irrelevant. Not irrelevant, but to me, I'm going to live with that result. It's 4th and 8. You threw an interception down near the goal line. It's not the worst thing in the world. The worst thing in the world is he ends up running it back for 55 yards.
Right. Yeah.
The 1st and 10 interception, for no reason whatsoever. It's not like it was open and then he floated it and the DB got there. Like, I've not seen an angle where it was ever open and he just throws it up there on 1st and 10. That's crazy. But it's also like, man, I think he felt like, I've got to make something happen because we're down. And if I don't do something, we're screwed. So to me, the key is they've got to figure out a way to keep him ahead of the chains and to help him understand these situations. And if they do that, you're not going to face a better defense than that. I don't think.
Right.
Maybe Clemson's. I don't think so. I think Miami's defense might be the best defense you face. So if he can fix that, I don't know if he can, but if he can, you're not going to face a better defense, and you may have some really good days ahead of you.
Yeah, maybe Clemson's and maybe Florida's at the end of the season, but that's a long way off, to your point. So there is time there. Yeah, I think I'm disappointed because and I'll speak from the fan side of it, because my hopes got up that Tommy was going to a different level, and there was this linear growth that you had seen. Like, okay, well, with Tommy at the helm, with Gus designing the offense specifically for him, you can bank on 450, 500, 550 yards in each game. And they're not going to come somewhat in large part from garbage time. Like, you're going to get those in the key moments. And part of me thinks that's still true because you had 180 at the break. And I swear, Ira, there's just a few things that are missed here and there. And you're probably at 250 or 275 at the break, and you're in a dogfight, and that changes the circumstances and the feel of the third quarter. And then there's other moments where I look at this, some of the plays back from the Virginia game, and I look at some of the plays in the Miami game, and I say, he's better than he was at Boston College, but he's still, Tommy, which is he's going to make you right when you're wrong, and he's going to do some things to get you out of bad looks or bad situations. And then there's going to be things that are lined up perfectly, and you go, oh my God, how did we not get something more out of this? Like, for example, the double reverse flea flicker, and you've got the throw to Randy as he's breaking to the right, and they show the replay. It's a good replay on the wire cam. As he's rolling out, and you see Randy down the field with a lead, and then Roydell's emerging from the left, you freeze it there in that moment. And you say, how is this not an explosive play for Florida State? And instead, you're punting in that situation. So you combine that with the turnovers and the 15-yard penalty, and that's how you get to only 3 at the break. But you're also correct to say, we talked a lot about Ruben Bain and some about Mesidor, but like a lot about Bain, and he lived up to the billing. And Miami's secondary made quite a few plays where, if they don't get to this spot in this time, Florida State's got a gain of 20. Instead, it's a gain of 4. That's what good players can do for you, is they can put you in a situation where Florida State's in 2nd and 7, and they're not getting down inside the 20-yard line, and the crowd's going nuts. That's where having the better players, and Miami had more good players, can make the difference for you. So I think it's a bunch of everything.
Yeah.
But on the personal side, I had higher expectations for Tommy, and I think probably I got out over my skis on that.
Well, they're some better players. I think they have a better roster. On top of that, it's like we've conveniently like overlooked. I feel like, and I don't know if you guys talked about it much on Jeff's show, but like, feel like we've conveniently forgotten about the fact they had a bye. And if you listen to the post-game press conference with Mario Cristobal and then with Carson Beck, their press conferences after the game, they both independently specifically said those 2 weeks of practices were awesome for them. Like they were the best practices they had all year. There were things that they weren't hitting on. There were things they weren't clicking on early in the season, the first 3 or 4 weeks, that they cleaned up during that bye week. And Florida State, that Virginia game is a physical freaking football game. Now, we tried to paint it as the positive is now Florida State's realized they've got to bring it because they saw what happens if they don't. They were not very physical in that. They wore the hits in the Virginia game. Well, they had to turn around and play 8 days later. Miami had that bye. And so now you have the better team who's got time to put things in, and if you watch Shannon Dawson's press conference today, he talked about, setting up the flea flicker because they knew that Florida State was going to be determined to stop the run because of the way they played the week before. So it's like, not only was Miami the better team, but I think a lot of the things around the game worked in their favor. The one thing that shouldn't have was the crowd being on the road, but that once you turn the ball over and you're not putting any pressure on them, I think that just alleviated that.
How would you assess what Tony White did? I'll just set the stage. Again, for those of you who didn't want to go back and look at box scores, understood. 24 rush yards on 12 carries for Miami at the break. So that is a success. But then if you watch the game, you all saw it with your eyes. A lot of coverage busts, a lot of times when Miami receivers are wide open. In fact, on that first drive, the second down throw from Beck is underthrown woefully to Tony, and they have it's almost like a warning shot there where you go, ooh, you might want to cover it up a little bit on the back end because you're beat deep. He had only, I think, 2 incompletions at the half, and it felt like, Miami could do mostly what it wanted to do through the air. Tony definitely tried something different schematically. 4 guys lined up with their hands in the dirt, more guys around the line of scrimmage because they wanted to take away plan A. How do you grade out what you saw versus maybe the Virginia performance, which rightfully scared this defensive staff and this defense?
And again, I watched Shannon Dawson's interview today, and I thought he's accurate. I mean, the truth hurts a little bit, but he said, listen, they decided to take away our run, and they did. They even played some bear. They played 5-man front. They really tried to do everything they could to limit the running. Well, that's the smart thing to do. That's what you should do. And he said, because teams that don't do that, well, we're just going to run and we're going to dink and dunk you to death. Carson Beck is clearly comfortable doing the dink and dunk stuff. We talked about that he hadn't really shown because they hadn't needed to really push the ball downfield as much because he was confident and just comfortable taking all the underneath stuff and then running the football because that's kind of how teams were playing them. Florida State said, no, we're going to come up and we're going to try to stop the run, and we think our DBs are good enough. And then Shannon Dawson said in the thing, he goes, they thought their corners could cover us. And he goes, and that's what people are going to decide. They're going to decide what they're going to do. And they think their corners are good enough to cover us. And he goes, well, we're not. And he sounded a little arrogant in saying that, but at the end of the day, he was right. Now, Tony White and Mike Norvell will say that there were some alignment issues. Guys didn't get the right depth. Guys made mistakes, and they're pissed off about that, and they have a right to be. I'm not sure I wonder how much it would have mattered. And I kind of asked him that today, and I don't know if I asked it correctly or not. And his answer was, at least we give ourselves a chance if we get lined up correctly. But I wonder if they were good enough. Man, Tony's a special player. And the other kid that had the 2 big plays also looked very good to me. So, again, you have to pick your poison. You're not gonna be able to take away everything. I thought they took away the right thing, in my opinion, and that was to try to take away the run. I didn't know that they'd be able to do it. I was impressed that they did.
Yeah, same here. Like, if you can find a way, and this isn't the most process-oriented, it's a results-oriented take, and I'm usually on the process side of it, but if you can find a way to get Miami at 14 points at the break, I think that's mission accomplished. Right. If you're just talking about freeze it in time, where were we at half? And that's where, again, the third quarter, Florida State only has like 30 yards. I mean, it's a dominant quarter for Miami, and that's where they put this game away. It's 28-3 to start the fourth. That's where things get away from you. But I thought just for those first 30 minutes, if you told me before the game started that, yeah, you're going to hold Miami's run game down, you're going to hold them to 14, I would have thought that the Florida State offense was impervious to scoring less than 7 or 10 points in a half. And that's what they're going to have to learn from this week, Ira, because it's a noon kick. Pitt just found a quarterback, it would appear. Now, some of that could be obviously the opponent that they just played in Boston College, but they've got more hope than they had before the kid came in and played, and he's completing somewhere around 75% of his passes to start the season. It's a home game, but it's a sleepy nooner circumstance. It has that extra feel to it. Like, you guys good? You're going to wake up on time? You're going to be ready to play? Because Pitt's coming to town to make its own statement. Florida State is still number 25 in the AP poll. So it's a ranked win for the road team if they can go get it. This is kind of one of those chin checks. How do you feel about the way this week sets up? And did the fourth quarter effort by Florida State on both sides give you legitimate hope that they're going to be ready to go on Saturday? Or do you think that was more about just one night and trying to do all they can to save face? What do you think?
I mean, I think there's no guarantee, but given the choice of how that fourth quarter could have gone, you love the way they finished a lot more than you would have otherwise. I think if they had rolled over, or if they had just gone through the motions and just kind of limped through the end of that game, then yeah, you wouldn't have anything to hang your head on going into this game. You'd be hoping for the second straight week that they're trying to find some pride and pick up where they make right what they made wrong the last week. But instead, they did play their butts off in the fourth quarter, and you had a lot of guys that on both sides of the ball. I mean, Miami was still trying to move the football. They were not content to just run clock and punt. They were trying to get first downs. Florida State's defense played really well in the fourth quarter. That's impressive. Like, it stinks that overall they lost the game and they played the way they played and they gave up the big plays on defense. But from the standpoint of you're down 28-3 and you fight back the way they did, man, that's just super impressive. And so, I think that should give them reason to believe going into this week. Now, Mike Norvell and Corey just wrote a column on this, and people can go read it at warchant.com if you're a subscriber or start a trial. It's $1 for a week, everybody. But if you Corey was kind of like taken aback by how confident Mike Norvell sounded today, and it didn't seem like false confidence. Like, I think he thinks that they're a lot better than they looked against Miami, and he thinks that they're not going to play teams that are probably as good as Miami. So I think they walked out of that game thinking, yeah, man, we got knocked to the ground. We took some standing 8 counts, but at the end of the game, like, we just ran out of rounds. Like, I think that's how they're seeing it. Like, in the fourth quarter, they were the better team, and they think if they had more time, if they had just kind of found themselves earlier, the result could have been different. So I think they take a lot of confidence out of that. So your concern after that loss was, are they spent? And do they have anything left this week? I think the way they finish gives them an opportunity to kind of carry that energy over. We'll see what they do. I can't prove it, but I do think that it's a positive the way they ended it.
The good news is we don't have to wait very long on Saturday to find it out. It's a noon kick. I think everybody's ready for a noon kick after these last couple of primetime games. You want to see what Florida State is, how they respond, because it's one thing to do it in the moment. It's another to sit on this for a week and then summon it and then bring it to the table on a Saturday afternoon in the ACC with a motivated opponent coming down into town. If you're looking for motivation in the insurance game, motivation to make your life easier, well, all you got to do is reach out to State Farm agent Russ Forrest, a diehard Nole fan who was none too pleased on Saturday night. Might have caught a text or two from Russ regarding the results on the field, especially through those first 3 quarters. And who can blame him? He's just like you out there, everybody, except he runs an insurance agency, and he can help you if you live in the state of Florida, the state of Georgia, or Alabama, with all of your needs. Ira, I've worked with him. I know you have reached out to him. You've consulted with Russ Forrest. He knows his stuff, and he runs a first-class operation with excellent customer service.
Yeah, you might want to commiserate with him this week. Just give him a call and see how he's doing. Give him a kind of a little welfare check. Russ did not take that game very well, but like a lot of you watching this as well. But no, Russ does a great job. We've known him for a long time. Really just a good guy, huge Nole, and runs a great business over there. Puts a huge premium on customer service, really tries to hire high-quality people who do a great job and wants to service the customers. He wants to do a good job, not just get your money on the front end, but really service you on the back end and do a great job. And he's got the 2 offices in the Jacksonville area, but you don't have to be in the Jacksonville area to get their access to their services. So go to their website, get more information at russvorhis.com, russvorhis.com, or call the phone numbers on the screen. I don't know if, Tommy, you want to share them with the podcast listeners, but people can reach out to them and just set up a little consultation, get some information, and I think you'll be pleased with what you hear.
I feel like I often do the Orange Park number. So Jacksonville Beach, everybody. Jacksonville Beach, if you're listening on the pod, 904-834-4282, 904-834-4282. We're going to get some interesting insight here from Warchant lead football analyst Dominic Robinson in just a moment. He can speak to the emotion of being a former player, a dad of a current player, and then also the lack of emotion of an analyst watching from the stands, looking at all 22. before we do that, I want to return to the first half question because it's something I want to ask Dominic what he thinks. What do you think was a realistic output for Florida State offensively in the first half? They put up 3, they had 180 yards. Do you think that's representative of the way the half played out, or do you think that all things being equal, they play that half more times? They're at 7, 10, 13, 14, 17. Where do you think that it could have been?
I think 13, 14 is certainly realistic. I think that you get a field goal the first drive, that could have been 7. I mean, that drive could have been 7. And then, there's a couple other drives where you should have at least gotten points. So I think if the first drive ends up with 7 and then you get a couple field goals, well, you're at 13. I mean, you're in pretty good shape. I just, man, that's the situational football. That's what killed them each of these last 2 weeks. And that's where just Tommy has to be smarter. But I also think, and Dominic can share his perspective as a coach and as a player, but, I think they got to help him out. I mean, I really do think that the coaching staff has to, I'm not going to say like, I don't know. I'm not going to say they need to like Tommy proof some things, but I do feel like there's maybe take away some of the responsibilities, because I think they're putting a lot on him. And when you have a quarterback that has to make so many decisions all the time and then also be that kind of athlete, I think it's a lot to ask. So I don't know what they can do. Maybe Dominic might have some thoughts, but I feel like in those situations, when you get closer into the red zone, maybe make it less complicated, more simple, if it's possible. I don't know if it is possible, but I think that's something I'd like to see. Just less opportunities for mistakes when you get down in scoring territory.
I can tell you that one thing I'm sure he agrees with is that on 2nd and goal of the first drive, his son got yanked out of the way of what should have been a touchdown catch. I think we would all agree that's a PI. Not the reason Florida State lost the game. Miami made a lot of good plays. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting his take on specifically how much he thinks was user error, that is Florida State's own errors that prohibited the Noles from scoring more points in the first half, and how much he thinks is because Miami makes great plays. Because I can tell you, after the Rizzi penalty, there's a couple of plays. It's 1st and 25, so you think, well, the drive's already over, Tom. I'm telling you, Florida State's on the brink of putting themselves in a good 3rd down situation if Ruben Bain isn't just a monster. So the first play after that penalty, which was a killer, is a run to the left for Sawchuk, and Bain runs it down from the opposite side of the field and stops it in its tracks, even though it's blocked pretty well ahead of Sawchuk. Then the next play is a quick throw out to Jalen Lucas on a screen where they've got blockers leading the way for Jalen, and he's going to get you back into 3rd and manageable, but Bain alters the angle of the throw because he's so fast and he's so quick, so Tommy has to angle it. By the time the ball gets to Jalen, he's not catching it in stride, and now you're in 3rd and forever. And then I think we missed one on the 3rd down as well. But between he and Mesidor made a couple of great plays on the opening drive, and obviously they both they were up to 40 pressures, I think they were given throughout the game. I think in the first half, you probably had 12 to 15 quarterback pressures there, Ira. So, I mean, a lot of it is that Miami just happened to make a whole lot of plays, and there's not much you can do about that when the other team is on scholarship and pretty good as well.
Yeah, and that's where I go back to. And again, Dominic can talk more to the scheme stuff, but to me, I just look at those tackles were in for a rough day against those ends. And I don't know, maybe more chipping, more tight end helping. I don't know. Again, I just felt like that's a lot to ask those guys. And so, but I don't know how much you can alter what you do. This is the offense Gus has built. So you're going to do what you got to do.
I can tell you there was one play. It's a sack that Tommy takes in the first half from the right side. It's a boundary side pressure, which Heatherman calls all the time. You don't have it's covered on the left, but on the right you got Pittman and Deuce running long developing routes, and Tommy's got no choice but to eat it there and just take the sack. That ain't going to work this week, Ira. Now I don't know if that's somebody missed a hot or a reaction play that, if there's a blitz coming, you've got to turn around. But they're going to need some kind of rules like that for quick outlet throws for Tommy, because Pitt is one of the most aggressive teams in the country when you're talking about bringing a 5th guy and bringing a 6th guy. That's something that they're going to have to be able to react to this week, because Tommy's he's not going to have the time. It's not even necessarily about offensive line, defensive line. It's just about the sheer numbers that it's going to throw at the problem.
Yeah, no, and obviously that's got to be a big part of the game plan this week. And the challenge against Miami, again, so much of it is the physical challenge where they didn't have to bring a lot of pressure, and they could drop their safeties and still get home. Well, that's a tough ask, man. It's a tough ask for an offense to deal with a front that's like that's going to get pressure on your quarterback and also play coverage. I mean, it's just Tommy could have been better, but I don't know how many quarterbacks would have done great.
Yeah, it's one thing that Gus said last night. He's like, well, that's a good defensive coordinator. And I'm not saying that Corey Heatherman isn't, because his track record's very good. But if you could start anybody's career with Bain and Mesidor on their defensive front, that's a really nice way to deploy resources. And
I don't know if he's a great coach or not, but it's kind of like intimidating to see those two dudes being coached up by Jason Taylor. Like seeing that on the sideline, it's like I'm watching it and I'm like, well, that's not fair.
Yeah, Jason Taylor could be great or not. Yeah, you're right. But
I don't know.
He is an imposing figure on the sidelines. And then those two guys, like, for example, the first 3rd and goal of the game. So you don't get the call on the PI on 2nd and goal. They rush 3 and they drop 8 because they know they don't need to do more than just rush 3 in that situation. And Tommy gets a little bit of happy feet. He bails, but can you blame him? That's the scouting report. So we're going to get Dominic Robinson's thoughts in just a minute. He's getting settled in the green room. And we're going to get questions from you guys as well. Thank you very much for being here on the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Forhis. Nearly about 3 bills here in YouTube, and then across our multimedia footprint, about 1,000 folks. We are going to get 15 seconds from our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Forhis, and we will be right back here on Warchant TV, and then welcome Coach D-Rob to the fold shortly after that. We'll be right back.
Contact Russ Forhis for an auto quote today.
Should get you up to date on some injury news for Florida State. Today it was learned that Quindarius Jones, who Ira and I, we had a text exchange about this yesterday. Didn't see him on the snap count board, but then you said, yeah, but he's on the participation chart. Quindarius Jones is out for the season with an injury that he suffered early in the game on Saturday, according to Mike Norvell, and it will require surgery. He was Florida State's primary corner reserve. That's not great. Micah Pettis left the game on Saturday. Ira, I don't think there's been clarity on exactly how long he's going to be out. It doesn't sound like it's super long term, but obviously Florida State had to play the offensive line shuffle on Saturday night. And it sounds like, based upon, you asked the question today, Squirrel White, he takes a targeting foul, a targeting call at punt returner. It sounds like he's in concussion protocol, but they didn't say that specifically. Where do you think things stand for Florida State injury-wise?
Yeah, we don't know exactly what it is there, but yeah, man, he obviously got targeted and came out of the game at that point. And Mike Norvell just said that they're evaluating him. They're evaluating several guys, including Pettis as well. So we don't have clear information. Quindarius' injury is significant because he was your number 3 cornerback, and that's basically what they've done the last few years. They'll have the 2 starters, and they'll rotate one guy in, kind of can fill it in either spot. And the good news is, they do have a lot of corners, and a lot of guys that have not gotten to play because they've kind of settled on that rotation. But I think you will see some, Charles Lester and Kai Bates and some of those guys that have been waiting in the wings. And we saw Shamar Arnaud got in the game some the other night. So there are other options they've got. But yeah, Quindarius, it seemed like he had kind of started getting into a stride. He didn't seem like he had a great camp. He didn't win one of the starting jobs, but it seemed like he had been coming around. So it stinks that he has a season-ending injury.
I just muted myself. I don't know. I thought I was muted in the beginning of that. We'll see where Florida State stands. We'll have updates for you as we get closer to game day. Of course, the injury report now, the initial one comes out on Thursdays. So we will keep you abreast of that here on warchant.com and Warchant TV. It's now time to bring in Coach Dominic Robinson, Dad Dominic Robinson, after a tough game. And D-Rob, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with this question. I felt like in the first half of this game on Saturday, Florida State's at 180 yards of offense. They're across the 50-yard line an awful lot. I felt like it was a bit of an outlier that they only had 3 points on the board. Do you agree with that or not? And do you think that only having 3 at the break is more on Florida State user error, or if it's more that Miami's just got really good players?
I do. And I would say that is one of the few drives that I would put on us, whether that's the execution of the plays being called or the play calling. I just think you're high enough level of offense that on that drive, you have to get 7. You just have to. And honestly, especially as a defensive coach, I never feel like there's any drive where you have to, like I'm not that guy that thinks that every drive should end in a touchdown. I'm not that guy that is like, hey, call the touchdown play and, thinks everybody sucks because they don't score. I think it's really hard to score on defenses like Miami. But I did think that on that specific drive, man, I was really fighting myself, sort of having the sky is falling feeling, because it did in the moment, which I typically in the moment, I'm just like, hey, it's a long game. There's a lot of football left to be played. This probably shouldn't be that big a deal. And I'll be honest, in the moment, I was like, oh shoot, this is a problem. Because how often are you going to get down there? That's the thing, is like, how often are you going to get down there? How often are you going to be able to string together the type of drive that they did? And as we saw, they never strung together a drive like that again. I mean, you look at the 19-play drive, which was insane.
You ever seen a 2-minute offense have a 19-play drive?
That was absolutely insane. But even that, I mean, that didn't look like that first drive in terms of, again, it was way tougher sledding. There was way much work. It was way harder to get those yards than it was those yards on that first drive. So yeah, I just think you have to score on that first one. You got to get 7. There's no book that's going to tell you to go for it on 4th down there. Just my gut said you go for it, and you got a lot of football. Like I said, you got a lot of football to play, and if you don't get it, maybe you lose this game by 2 scores instead of 1. But what's the difference? At least you actually took the shot, and you gave yourself an opportunity to possibly win. These are the games where you got to win them. You can't play to not lose. The team's probably better than you. And what you don't know is that you're going to lose your tackle in a couple snaps, so that's obviously some of this is hindsight. And so, but in the moment, I'll tell you, it's not a hindsight look. I did think you got to have 7. Obviously I'm optimistic. It's my team and my son's out there, so I'm still thinking we can win. But I kept replaying in my head, like you have to score 7 points here. And I did not feel like it was what Miami did, aside from the pass interference on 2nd down. That was a hell of a play by the guy. You take that back, and that's either 6 or it's 1st down. First and goal from the 2. So now you're looking at a whole new set of downs, and then maybe you get your 4th down. Maybe that's where Coach Norvell goes for it on 4th down instead of kicking there. So
okay, a quick follow-up on that. I'm just wondering, who has the harder time with an obvious pass interference, dad or son, from that 2nd down play?
Honestly, son, probably. I don't know. Both of us are so like level that it's just a part of the game, and we understand. And like, it's mom that's where you get the problem. That's and her whole family, like they're insane when it comes to dealing with refs and umps and all of that stuff. Where I tend to expect, especially with Deuce, to be honest, his whole life people have just jumped on his back. I mean, he's so big. He's such a huge. It's so hard, even as a defensive back. It's so hard to not hold him because of how big he is and then how fast he's moving. I got to do something to gain some sort of advantage. I can't just play this guy straight up, because he's 6 inches taller than me, and he's 25 pounds heavier than me, and he moves just as fast as I do. So you got to gain something, somewhere. So, he held, which was a good play by him, and it didn't get called. And so, that's you got to keep playing.
If it makes anybody feel better, our understanding is the ACC did acknowledge since the game that should have been called. So if that makes you feel better, they have acknowledged it.
Yeah, it was clear. I thought even in the moment, like, yeah, that's pass interference, but you got to move on to the next play. And I just, you got to have
But isn't that
You got to
true
have a set on the first drive. You got to have a set of plays that you feel really good about, that you're gonna score there, and unfortunately they didn't.
I want to get your thoughts on this, Dominic. And this is not specifically, we're not asking you to judge necessarily this team. Your son's a huge part of it. But in terms of, it's 2 games in a row now where situationally they have not played great. Like, is that something that can get better over the course of a season? Or are people right to be like, we squander opportunities, that's just who we are? Like, how often do you see it where that can improve over the course of a season?
Oh yeah, I mean it definitely can improve, but it's a hard thing to improve, because typically you are situationally you are sort of a reflection of your coordinator and then your best players,
Right.
and so either the coordinator isn't deploying the players properly, or the timing of those calls are not in alignment with the personality of those players in order for them to express the best versions of themselves in the moment. And so those are very volatile that's a very volatile chemistry experiment that's happening in real time.
Real time.
It's like, I've got to call this play at this time that allows this player to express the best version of himself right now. That's not even taken into effect all of the chemistry that the other team now presents, which is they send the pressure, they have a front like Miami's, they play a certain coverage or a leverage that goes against the thing that you think your players do well. There's so many things that go into that. So yes, it absolutely can change. And what's interesting, and this is where like teams go on these hot streaks and things like that, is at some point you find this perfect chemistry, and then you just kind of hit that button over and over and over and over. And if you can get it at the right time based off of your matchups, you get a special group that begins to excel. And then again, styles make fights. So then now all of a sudden you play a different team that completely throws off that equation. And then just that fast, something that you thought was a strength or something that you've been leaning on for 5 weeks, 5 weeks straight, you can throw red zone fade, and then all of a sudden you can't throw red zone fade, and you end up losing a game because you hit that button 3 times and they get you in bad situations. And then now all of a sudden you can't run those concepts or those plays. So yeah, it's a really volatile, chemistry experiment that's happening in real time with sort of, chaotic, results at times, until you can settle into, a good balance between, again, using your strengths versus, avoiding or using against the other team, sort of what they do well.
Wanted to get your take. You're a defensive coordinator right now on the day job, or on the Friday night job, I should say. And
Yeah.
you were talking about it at Hotel Indigo when you came on about, I'm not sure what Florida State can do to stop Miami's run. They committed to it, put a lot more hands in the dirt, a lot of bodies near the line. How would you assess what Tony White did against the challenge that Miami presented?
Honestly, I thought they were phenomenal. And maybe that's probably going too far. That's probably too big of a word. But I thought they were really, really good. I thought they played their butts off. I thought the challenge that they had was greater than I thought it would be, because their play caller was tremendous Saturday night. He was so good. And, I did say this before, I said it at, in the breakdowns with Carson Beck, and then, Saturday early.
Are you talking about, real quick, you're talking about Shannon Dawson, Miami's play caller?
Miami, yes.
Yeah.
Miami's play caller. Yeah, sorry. Miami's play caller was tremendous. And I don't know that he's been that good all year or what, but I just know that in our game, watching it in real time, which I have not watched it back yet, I thought, man, this guy is really doing a great job of understanding and staying just within themselves, and then just not aborting that mission at all, not trying to get whatever the to go mark was, he was not trying to get all of it on any play call except for the flea flicker that they ran, I think was at the second quarter. Like that, he must have called probably 40 plays that were designed to get 4 to 6 yards, before he called a play that was supposed to get past the first down marker. And I thought that was a really good strategy that most offensive coordinators abort because of ego. They want to show that they can, be high flying and score a bunch of points and all that. And I think he knew we're not going to score 40 tonight. And we're just going to get first downs. And man, I thought he called a great game. And it really, it was really, it's frustrating as hell, as a defensive coach and and just watching Tony from the stands, I just know he was frustrated as hell because the guy was calling a great game. And then what I was going to say about Carson Beck, he's executing at such a high level. I mean, it's just off the charts. The way that he's executing, he's not doing anything special. But then you say that, but at the same time, you go, well, isn't it special that you can operate an offense at such a high level? And my answer would be yes. That is what he is doing special, is when the plays are coming, he's executing them exactly how they should be executed. The ball is not going where, to the other guys, and it's going where it's intended, 90% of the time, and it's on time. And man, it was from an offensive standpoint, it would have been a lot of fun to watch if you're an offensive coach. But
can I ask you
was pretty frustrating.
Can I ask you one question on that topic? So when I went back and watched Carson Beck's press conference, he said that they only dialed up a couple of shot plays or a few shot plays, but when they did, he said it worked out where they got the looks they were hoping for. They got the looks they wanted. I thought it was interesting to me that he's a guy, he's a fourth, fifth year guy, Carson Beck. I'm not sure if he's fourth or fifth year college quarterback, but he's obviously played in huge games, huge environments. And I don't remember him making any checks at the line, or not many checks at the line. Like it almost was like they were going to ride with whatever they called because they didn't want to deal with the crowd and make it like, because that's Alabama made a lot of line checks and that's where they got into trouble. Is that what they do, or is that just possible? Is that just something you think they got the looks they wanted and they didn't have
he's been calling protections, all season, and all the breakdowns that I had, he was very, communicative at the line, making plays, either changing plays or changing directions and setting up protections. So that's something that he had done. And I do think they came into the game with, like I said, I thought they had a very simple plan of, we're going to get 3 and fall forward. Sometimes those will be 6. Sometimes those will be 3. I was shocked when I looked and saw that they only went for it on 4th down 3 times and they got it twice. It felt like at the game, it felt like 5. I thought they were 5 for 5 on 4th down. It felt like a lot. And they were really not good on 3rd down either. It was it 8 for 5 of 14 on 3rd down. But man, at the game, it did not feel that way. I'll tell you, in real time, it felt like and the reason was because on every 3rd down, they were doing such a good job of, there were probably very few incompletions. And when they did run the ball, they were getting in, very 4th and short, 4th and manageable, spots. And when they needed it, they would go. And when they didn't, they would punt. But it was just the ball was just never in danger, all night. And so, he wasn't checking or changing protections, because I do think they simplified the game plan, just to be safe. And I think, I'll tell you guys, just as again, I'm a fan. I'll admit I'm a fan. A lot of what they did shows you how far we've come, how good we are on defense. It was a lot of respect that they gave us. And, the way that they played the game, sort of showed, okay, we think a lot of this team, of this defense. We think a lot of this front. and we're going to take shots when we think we have them. The one shot play came right after the fumble. We fumble, they take a shot. I mean, that's as old as time. That's not, that is not, that may have been the most, respectful moment that you'd ever seen in terms of like taking a shot, because that's as safe as it gets. The ball was on their side of the field, and it was right after a fumble. Sudden change shot play is, again, that's a story as old as time. So
what's interesting, real quick, what's interesting about that, and Tom, I'll let you ask the next one. Sorry, but what's interesting about it is also Shannon Dawson in his press conference today, he said, when they saw how Florida State's defense struggled against the run against Virginia, and then read some of the comments, they knew that was Florida State was going to probably try to sell out to stop the run. Like they had to do that as much as they could. And so they expected the safeties to be coming downhill, and Earl Little, that's his MO anyway. So they put in the flea flicker earlier in the week specifically because they knew there was going to be an opportunity for that. And then it lined up perfectly in that situation because, and I asked Tony White about the flea flicker and, would you want Earl and KJ Kirkland, the other safety, to not be as aggressive? He's like, man, we're trying to stop the run. And when they see the back get the ball, they're coming. Like it's hard.
Absolutely.
To get,
No.
So it was perfect. No. It was a perfect play call, really set up by the fact you didn't stop the run the week before. So they knew the aggression was going to be so high. I mean, I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I thought. And to be honest, like Carson even said, I think they took about 4 shots in that game, and they hit on all of them. And that's probably why I felt like they were 5 for 5 on 4th down, because some of them probably weren't 4th downs. But they didn't not take a lot, not even shots. They didn't even really run intermediate routes. They ran. I can't wait to, do a breakdown and just see how many drop back passes they had. Cause it was, I don't know that there were any. It was all quick game.
Yeah.
It was all quick game and run. And so they just didn't give us much chance for, to kind of, flip the game via turnover, with the ball in the air and even just sacks. They had very few negative plays.
So looking at the box at the half, Dominic, first of all, Miami had 24 rush yards and 12 carries. It's like, check, good job defensively. Yep. Florida State had 180 yards at the break. It's a little over 4 yards a play. So it's not like you're gashing them, but that's a lot of yards at the break against this Miami defense. I'm coming back to this point and speak specifically as much as you feel comfortable, because I know you're close to the situation with the Florida State offense. But it felt like to me, even at 180 yards, that there's opportunities there to be at 250, 275, and it doesn't take much to get there. Is that fanish and foolish on my part because Miami has good players, or do you think there were some things that Florida State might have left out there to maybe have been putting up more points, more than just that first drive, and then a little bit more production? Because I felt like it wasn't that far off from a big half offensively.
Yeah, I felt like 14-10 at the least is where it should have been. You probably 14-13, maybe tied. Again, that's where that first drive, I just thought, man, if you score there, I think this is a completely different game. I think you put a little bit of pressure on them to push the ball down the field a little bit, because we honestly, like defensively, looked like we were going to get some stops, and they looked like they had some stuff figured out, and it wasn't going to be easy sledding for them either. It wasn't until the third quarter where things looked a little bit easier for them. But yeah, going in at half, I thought you just didn't take advantage of the opportunity you had to put some pressure on them. When they can go into the half up 2 scores and they hadn't played their best yet, you hadn't either, but they hadn't played their best yet. You want them feeling like, hey, we're either, tied or down and we're on the road. And not only were they not tied or down, they're up 2 scores, and that, I thought that was kind of the telltale, story of the game. You hear guys talk about the middle 8, the last 4 of the second quarter and the first 4 of the third quarter. And, we clearly lost that. They scored, we didn't score, and then they scored, coming out of half.
And and then they were going to get the ball
and
Coming
they
out of
got
half,
the ball. Yeah, they got the ball coming out of half and scored in the third quarter. I just thought you again, when you play teams like this, the opportunities in terms of like getting up or getting ahead or gaining an advantage, they're so small. The windows are very small. They open and shut. They're going to get theirs. They're going to make their plays. So when you do, get down there, you got to get 7. And when we didn't do that, I did feel early. I did feel like, man, we're probably in trouble here unless we can then get a turnover. And that's what they knew. They knew the only way we're going to lose this game is if we turn it over or we make a mistake. So they didn't allow their guys to do it, man. They held on to the ball. They ran it. They were really just running the same run scheme. They weren't doing anything fancy. And then, when they had their chance to take a shot, they did, but it was pretty safe. And so it was, again, hats off to them. They looked very good. I was hopeful that maybe they weren't going to be as good as I thought they might be coming in, but they were just as good as I thought they were. And like I said, I thought the OC managed the game better than I was expecting. I thought under the lights they would try to showcase Carson a little bit more, and they didn't. And that was smart. That was a really smart thing. Just let him manage the game. That's what he does well. And I was hoping they would try and take a couple shots, and we maybe get some pressure, knock a ball out, sack fumble, make him throw one, and it just never happened.
A couple of quick contributions, Ira, before the next question.
Yeah, we're good.
First name John says, "I'm just here so Owen could find," and you're paying as well. Thank you, first name John. We appreciate you for the contribution. And BG says, "Hey guys, sorry if it's been talked about, but if the Stars line upright, way above my actual expectations before the season started, what would have to happen for us to make the ACC championship game?" Well, BG, either Miami or Virginia would have to lose 3 conference games, and Florida State would need to run the table, and you would have to avoid Georgia Tech, being 7-1 in conference as well. So you would need either or both, and I don't think we think Miami's going to lose 3 ACC games. Virginia or Miami to have 3 ACC losses for Florida State to have an opening to get to Charlotte. Thank you.
I think you have a much better chance of getting in as an at-large team than you do getting into. I think you have a better chance of getting into the playoffs as an at-large team, which isn't a great chance, but there's a better chance of that than getting the ACC championship game. I think that door is probably shut.
Dominic, how much can a fourth quarter like that matter? Because, for the fans, they see 28-3 and they go, well, Miami's backing off. How much can that matter for a locker room?
Big, big. That is a big deal, man. And let me just preface that by saying it's a big deal till it isn't. It's just like the Georgia Tech loss, last year. It's just like, it's not a big deal until then you come home and then you stumble somewhere home. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, shoot, that Georgia Tech loss might have ended our season before it ever even started, type of thing. So this, to me, when you're presented with the scores of these games consistently, and there is psychology that goes with seeing that you were 6 points away, even if you weren't actually 6 points away. That does something to your preparation. That does something to there's always these small moments that I need to decide as a coach or as a player, and I guess as a coach too. Do I need to lean in? Should I lean in, or do I, take my foot off the gas pedal? And I mentioned this with last year's group. And if you have enough guys lean out, take their foot off the gas pedal, you end up in a disaster. And that's what happened last year. Was that team was nowhere near as bad as 2-10.
Right.
But all at the same time, everybody went, oh, shoot, I'm not doubling down on this thing. This is a sinking ship. I'm getting the heck off. And too many guys did it at the same time. And then you have some bad breaks. You have a couple of these other things happen.
Yeah.
And you end up with that, type of thing. Well, the same thing can happen on the inverse. It's like a bunch of guys can look and go, man, we're only 6 points away from the top, whatever, I don't know what they are, top 5 team in the country. We beat Alabama, who's going to be top 10 or 15. And, and we lost to Virginia on the road on a short week, so you do this, you kind of have this psychology that goes into where it's like, bro, we're a playoff team. So we may get into the playoff or we may not, but like, we're certainly that. Like, we're good enough to do that. And so I think scoring those points is big. Even just the perception of the fans. I thought something the fans did late, they started chanting. I can't remember what it was. Let's go Noles or FSU. And it was clearly we weren't going to win the game. I thought that was a really big moment. I think that, just to show the character of our fans and let the guys know, hey, we're still behind you, even though you're not going to win this, this rivalry game. As bad as we all want it, it's bad. Nobody wants it, more. I thought, just showing that, like, hey, we're still going to be in support of that. The guys will feel that and know that, and it'll be different. Seeing that score will be different than seeing a 28-3, because now it's like, how far are we from Miami? I'll also say it will make a difference in recruiting also.
Yeah, and we've got there's a lot of coverage at the site at warchant.com of recruit reactions, and that's what they're all saying. They're all the recruits are saying that how impressed they were by the fourth quarter, and that meant more to them than the first three quarters. And I'm not trying to convince fans of this. I want to get your opinion on this, though, D-Rob.
Yeah.
This analogy that I came up with earlier in the show, like, to me, it almost, you could, if you're one of the competitors in the fight, if you're one of the Florida State players, I think you could convince yourself of this. Whether or not the fans will believe it or media or anything else doesn't really matter. But I think if you're a player and you were on that field in the fourth quarter, it almost like in a boxing match where guys just getting destroyed for 5, 6, 7 rounds. But then he finds himself and he figures it out. He changes his approach, gets his jab working, whatever it is. And then he starts wearing the guy out in the later rounds, but he knows he's not going to have enough rounds to win the fight. But like so he's got to either get a knockout or he's going to lose. But he did find that confidence, and he is wearing that guy out, and that does matter. I mean, I think that, again, I don't know if fans are going to believe that or media, and that doesn't really matter. But do you think the players can take that away? That, man, we had them on the ropes, we just ran out of time.
Yeah, that, and again, it's nice if you have that fan support, like I said. Yeah. But I'll tell you, it means way more within the locker room that you believe that. And I've been a part of plenty of teams who have scored during, quote unquote garbage time. And then that whole week has been buoyed on, man, we were 1 score away. We were 1 score away. We were 2 scores off. We were, and whether it actually is or not doesn't really matter. Perception is reality, especially when it comes to sports and it comes to performance. If they believe that, even if Miami were to win 40-0, but they believe they're one, if they can actually work and train and approach their day-to-day, operations as if they're 1 score off, even if the actual score was 40-0, like that's all that really matters. It's like, it doesn't matter, whether I was actually 1 score away. If I can convince my mind that I was that close, then I will approach the game in that manner. And to me, that's the biggest thing. And so I'm not saying, I don't know,
right.
Again, even though my son's in that locker room, I'm not in that locker room. So I don't know, but I just know in all the teams that I've been involved with, the final score does matter, both when you're on the winning side and the losing side. There's times where you may get a garbage touchdown to beat a team, especially when it's your rival, beat a team by 2 touchdowns, but really it was a 1 score game. But that whole week you're talking trash about how you could beat your team by 2 touchdowns. That makes the difference. It really does. Psychologically.
I got one more quick question, Tom, and then you can take us home with whatever you got. D-Rob, the thing, it seemed like, one of the things that killed the offense in this game, that really hurt the offense, was, when they get behind the chains, and then also, the turnovers, getting off schedule. How as a play caller and as an offensive player, like what do you have to do to make sure that doesn't happen? Because it seems like, I just remember, like, Jameis is in 2013 and 2014 with Jameis, It didn't matter if they were 3rd and 18 or 2nd and 25. It didn't. None of that mattered. But most quarterbacks need to be on schedule, and so what can the play callers, the players, what can they do to make sure they don't get off schedule? Because it seemed like that's really what killed them.
Yeah. So you are absolutely, you nailed it. I think the game did come down to, and this is what I was kind of alluding to earlier, how Miami's OC managed either staying on schedule or when they were off schedule, not trying to get it all.
Right.
And that's a really hard thing to do, because sometimes it's not even about you trying to get it. It's about the players,
right?
And more specifically, the quarterback not trying to, on 2nd and 15, get 15, right. And so I got to call a play that puts him in the mindset to know, hey, we're just trying to get 6 here. And then he's got to go out there and he has to stay in that not trying to get it all, which I would imagine Tommy's probably that personality that wants to get it all. I think he's he's an uber hyper competitive guy that probably thinks every play should be a touchdown. And sort of like reining that in, pulling that back is sort of the magic of coaching and the magic of coordinating. It's like getting a guy to not do that. And so, I just thought that, again, I thought that the game came down to that. And I thought when we were presented with those 2nd and more than 10, we didn't manage it as well as Miami did. I thought every time we got them in, off schedule, they got right back on, right. And it was really, really, masterful to watch that they just consistently, it was not like if you were just looking for fun, it wasn't fun to watch at all. Like I said, it was 2nd and 15 and they would get 6. It was like, oh, it's 3rd and 9. And then they would get 6 again. And it's 4th and 3. And they would either punt or they'd go for it and they get it. It's just like, that's not real fun. It's not exciting to watch, but it's winning football, especially when you have a defense like that. And that's what they did, and I thought that was really good. I think that's, sort of the evolution of Gus and Tommy working together and figuring that out is sort of what's happening. Is like, okay, now we've got to start figuring out, what do I call to put him in that mindset to put the ball in the place that's not going to, hurt our chances of getting a first down later. We don't need it right now. We're just going to need to be in a position where we can get it, because 3rd and 15, we're just not going to win that battle, So I think that's, that's sort of the evolution of what Tommy and Gus are trying to figure out. And I think this defense, Miami defense, was a lot different than Virginia's defense. So, your answers last week are different than your answers this week. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where styles make fights and, figuring that out.
Perfect segue. If you had watched a lot of Pitt film, I'd be worried about you. I can't imagine you have, Dominic. But the quick and short on Pitt is that they bring a lot of pressures, 5, 6-man pressures. They love to blitz. There are a couple times in this particular week where you saw long developing routes. Maybe it's because Florida State's behind schedule, maybe not. Tommy had to eat it a couple times because you're waiting for something long developing down the field to break off for the throw. Just a 101 view of what Florida State and what Gus Malzahn's offense may need to do this week if they're going to be seeing a lot of pressure packages from Pitt. What are some things that they have in the offense that they can go to relieve that pressure?
Yeah, so, and let me actually go back and talk about, I don't know that these things are related, but I vaguely remember that Mike in one season sort of struggled in the red zone. And I don't know that these things are related, but I don't even know if, to call what we had this week as struggles, because that's just a really good defense, but just something that I did want to earmark is just like, I don't know if this is a trend that's starting to happen, is like, our offenses under Coach Norvell sort of slowing down. And I don't know how involved he is in terms of the red zone, preparation or not. It's probably all Gus's and the current offensive staff. So, but I did think that even when we did score, I mean, one of them was that scramble. I think two of them might have actually been scrambles, right? They weren't scheduled, unscheduled plays that were, where the offense was executing the play. And then that one, Deuce dropped that one. And I think they scored on the next play, maybe, which was a scramble. The one that Deuce was a scramble that everyone thought he caught. And then I think the next play was maybe to Randy on a scramble.
Yeah.
It's back-to-back scramble play. So I did just want to earmark just something to keep our attention on is this the red zone offense, and sort of the execution of those plays and sort of them trying to figure out their plan there. And then what was your question again? Oh, Pitt. Oh yeah. Yeah. So the thing that every offense, sort of has, even on your downfield concepts, you always have a hot answer, an answer for pressure. And so, Tommy just has to do a better job of finding that, within the offense. And then again, if he's not going to do that, Gus has to do a better job of sort of designing the offense so that it like Carson Beck, again, going back to what they did with Carson Beck, they don't even give him an option to push the ball downfield. There was nobody, running anything deep, it was all quick game. So, if you're going to get 5-6 man pressures consistently, you got to just put the ball in your players' hands and let them, all you got to do is, we talk all the time about you never let one guy tackle you. And so, when that happens, you throw quick game and you don't let one guy tackle you and you fall forward. And so now you've got yourself a good offensive play. And it's just that simple, as boring as it sounds, it's just that simple. And that's, if you want sort of a blueprint on how to do it, it's what Miami just did. Carson Beck was throwing quick game. Those guys were falling forward. It's, they're getting 6-7 yards on every, pass completion, and the ball's never in danger of, being sack fumble, being thrown for, it's not pushing, it's not in the air a long time. There's not a lot of air time. So there's not a lot of defensive players who have an opportunity at the football.
Real quick, I just want to accentuate how impressive it was what they did with run defense, because you mentioned falling forward a few times today. Mark Fletcher is a bad dude, and number really 6 is a little bowling ball too. Like the yards they got were hard fought yards. Like they didn't get anything easy. It was Florida State's defense deserves a lot of credit for what they did against a run.
I agree. Yeah. And I said it earlier, and I used the word phenomenal, and I don't know if you want to use phenomenal in a loss and when you give up 28, points, but they were very good, man. That's a tough offense. Those are some tough guys running the ball. Those are some great schemes. The calls were great, and they're ahead in the game, so they've got control of the clock. And and we got some stops when we needed, and we made some plays when we needed, and it wasn't enough because we just didn't score early to get them down. So
we appreciate the insights, Dominic. I know you probably got to be feeling some jet lag. It's a little bit different than popping over to LA from Arizona, man, right?
I'm hurting today, man. This one was rough. This one was rough. I did a game Friday, red eye. Yeah, obviously Saturday. So now I land in Tallahassee at 10 a.m. Game, the game is, we don't get home, with Deuce till 2 a.m. Turn around the next day, and then fly back, get back home at 1 a.m. this morning. And now, here we are. And I've been dragging all day. But it's all worth it, man. It's all worth it. But I'm dragging pretty bad.
At least we know you hydrate well.
I got to, man. I'm trying to stay alive. I'm hurting bad. And I woke up this morning. I was like, oh Lord, this is gonna be a rough one. I got nothing. But we're on a bye week, so that was good. I had my position coaches. The reason why I was able to do this, I had my position coaches run today's meetings, and so that gave me an opportunity to, I need to check out. I need a mental check out for a little bit, and we're on a bye week, so we'll practice Tuesday through Thursday this week, and then we've got a big one next week against Hamilton High School, which is where a lot of pro guys come out of Hamilton High School. So it'll be fun.
Keep your Google searches, everybody. Pinnacle Hamilton next week. Keep your Google searches ready for what defensive coordinator Dominic Robinson's turning in Arizona. We want to say thank you to Director Nick Carlisle behind the scenes. We want to say thank you to State Farm agent Russ Forrest for sponsoring tonight's program. For our featured guest, Dominic Robinson, jet lagged as he is, powering through for us. We very much appreciate that. For those of you that contributed in the chat with questions, with contributions, we'll get to more Q&A next week when we get back on the Monday Smash Post Pit edition. Ira, is there anything you wish to promote tonight before we sign off? Is there one more thing?
We got a lot of content coming.
Allow me. Nick has created something. Nick, unveil the video, please. And there it is. One more thing. What you got?
So Corey's column went up a little while ago talking about Norvell and kind of his approach today and what's still left on tap for the season. We got a Henshaw's House coming tonight, and my 3-2-1 column will be coming in the morning. So a lot of content coming. It didn't come right after the game. It was a late night, but it's coming over the next 24 hours. A lot of content on the site.
Head over to warchant.com right now. Sign up for just $1 if you're a student. Just email us support@warchant.com with your student email account. We'll get you hooked up for free. For Dominic, for Ira, Director Nick behind the scenes, my name is Tom. We appreciate you tuning in, and we will be back with you on warchant.com and Warchant TV very soon. Good night, everybody.